It began at the edge of the Orion frontier, where the stars burned cold and the air of the council chambers carried the scent of fear disguised as pride. The great hall shimmered with the glow of alien banners, the sigils of 100 empires pulsing in slow rhythm around a central hologram of the Milky Way. The Galactic Council had gathered for one purpose, to decide the fate of Earth. The old Terran colonies lay abandoned, quiet, their trade stations cold, their signals silent. To the Council, that silence was weakness. To them, humanity had surrendered. The chair of the Council, an enormous being of crystal and bone, struck the hammer of authority against the table, his voice booming through the hall. The Terran species has withdrawn from galactic law. Their silence threatens unity. We move for occupation. Laughter rippled through the delegates. One of them, a serpentine warlord from the Van Dominion, coiled lazily in his seat. Earth? They hide behind their little blue world and whisper about peace. Let us remind them that silence has a price. But not everyone laughed. The Sarin envoy, a tall, feathered being with golden eyes, leaned forward. You all forget, she said softly. The last time we called them weak, 5 empires fell. Her warning was met with scoffs. The Brack warlord slammed a metallic fist against the table. Those were different humans, desperate, wild. These are cowards. They vanished after Centauri. He grinned. We'll bring them back in chains. The vote was called. The chamber filled with the flicker of lights as each delegate cast their choice. The result was unanimous. The Council declared war on Earth. Within hours, fleets began to move. Across 1,000 star systems, war drums echoed through the void. Massive dreadnoughts left their docks, their engines roaring as plasma trails stretched across the dark. Entire squadrons assembled at the borders of Terran space, ships from the Van Dominion, the Brack Empire, the Zenth Confederacy. Their admirals stood tall, confident, certain that the war would end before it began. Reports from the frontier said the Terran colonies were undefended. No fleets, no orbital guns, just silence. They've surrendered already, one commander laughed. This will be over before nightfall. But something felt wrong. As the armadas entered Terran territory, their sensors began to fail. Static filled the screens. Navigation lights flickered. Communications cut out in bursts of distortion. We're picking up an echo, one officer said, eyes wide. It's repeating. The admiral frowned. What kind of echo? The officer's voice trembled. It's human. The audio cleared for a moment, and across every ship, every channel, a calm human voice spoke. Stand down. The words were simple, spoken in quiet English, repeated again and again. Stand down. The alien fleets laughed at first. It's a bluff, one shouted. They're trying to scare us. The admiral grinned, his sharp teeth glinting in the red light. Fire. Missiles launched. Plasma tore through the silence, streaking across the black sky toward the nearest Terran colony, Vega Outpost 4. The colony had no defense systems, no shields, just a planet covered in abandoned cities and broken satellites. The first volley struck the surface, and for a moment, everything went white. Then the light faded. The planet was gone. No explosion. No debris. Just gone. The fleet sensors screamed with errors. We lost the target, a pilot shouted. It's not showing on any map. The admiral barked orders, confusion twisting his face. Scan again. But before the scans could complete, the command ship systems flickered. The bridge lights dimmed. Then, one by one, every display turned black. What's happening? The admiral demanded. The navigation officer stammered. We're not alone. Outside the viewport, shadows moved, silent, enormous shapes gliding through space without heat or light. For a moment, the admiral thought his mind was playing tricks on him. Then the static cleared, and he saw them. Ships. Hundreds of them. Massive, angular, and dark as the void itself. Human ships. Their hulls bore no color, no insignia, only the faint glimmer of engraved letters that the admiral's translator rendered into his language. We tried peace. The alien fleet fell into chaos. They are behind us. How did they get here? They're not on scanners. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Fighters launched blindly, shooting into the dark. But the Terran fleet didn't move. Not yet. They just drifted, silent, patient, like predators waiting for the right heartbeat. Then a single transmission cut through every channel, a human voice low and cold. You mistake our silence for fear. The words echoed through every ship, through every mind. The Admiral's claws shook as he leaned forward, eyes wide. Who said that? He demanded. No one answered. Outside, the human fleet began to move. The first attack came not from weapons but from light. A wave of energy burst outward from the Terran ships, invisible, quiet, unstoppable. Every alien engine flickered, every weapon went dead. Shields collapsed. Navigation failed. And then the stars themselves seemed to fade. The alien fleet floated helpless, blind, powerless, as a single Terran battleship glided forward. Its hull was marked with deep scars, its engines silent, its presence ancient. From its surface, hundreds of smaller drones detached, spreading through the void like wings of metal. They latched onto enemy hulls, melted through armor, and vanished inside. Seconds later, those ships went dark, lifeless husks drifting through the void. The entire armada, thousands strong, silenced without a single shot fired. Back at the council, confusion turned to panic. Reports flooded in, fleets missing, colonies off the grid, systems unresponsive. We've lost contact with the Varn invasion force, one aide shouted. The Brak Armada's gone dark. The chamber exploded into chaos. It's sabotage. It's rebellion. The Sarin chair stood in the center, her feathers trembling. No, she whispered. It's retribution. In orbit above Earth, the truth began to unfold. From behind the planet's shadow, an entire armada emerged, ships unlike any ever seen before. They were enormous, sleek, forged from metals that bent light itself. Their engines hummed in perfect rhythm, as if the planet below was breathing through them. The Terran fleet had not been rebuilt, it had evolved. Each ship carried a name from humanity's past, etched in white: endurance, hope, vengeance, mercy. The flagship, Soul's Heart, led them, its commander standing tall on the bridge, eyes fixed on the stars. We gave them peace, he said softly. Now they'll learn what peace costs. Across the galaxy, fear spread faster than light. Civilizations that had once laughed at humans now turned off their transmitters, afraid to speak. The Council ordered all fleets to retreat, but it was too late. The void had already chosen its silence. Every species, every empire that had voted for war felt it. The realization that humanity had never been weak. They had simply been waiting. The Council's leader stared at the last incoming report, static and fragments of voices. What do they want? Someone asked. The leader's voice cracked when he answered. To be left alone. But even as he said it, deep inside his heart, he knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had spoken again, and the stars would never forget their words. At the edge of the Orion frontier, where the war had begun, the remains of the first alien fleet drifted silently among the wreckage of their own arrogance. Floating through the debris, a black Terran beacon pulsed once, sending out a signal that crossed every remaining frequency. It was calm, almost gentle, yet its message cut through the silence like a blade. This is Earth, it said. We tried peace. You wanted war. Remember this moment, because it will be the last time we answer with mercy. Then the signal vanished, leaving nothing but darkness and the faint hum of distant engines. Far away, in a quiet room buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, the leaders of humanity stood in silence, watching the transmission end. No one smiled. No one cheered. They had waited for this day for generations, yet it didn't feel like victory. The oldest of them, a woman with gray hair and weary eyes, spoke softly. We warned them, she said. They mistook silence for fear. The man beside her nodded slowly. And now they'll learn what silence really means. Outside, The Terran fleet gathered once more, their engines lighting up the dark like constellations reborn. And as they moved toward the endless void, their message echoed through every corner of the galaxy. A warning carved in light, calm, final, unforgettable. You mistake our silence for fear. The galaxy could not understand how an entire invasion fleet had vanished. There were no survivors, no wreckage, not even radiation left behind to prove a battle had taken place. The Council blamed sensor failure, data corruption, sabotage, anything but the truth. But deep inside, every commander, every soldier, every leader who had once mocked Earth felt something old stirring in their chest, something they had forgotten long ago. Fear. The Council called an emergency session. The delegates shouted across the chamber, voices trembling behind masks of pride. It's impossible, the Varn ambassador hissed, his eyes flickering. No species has technology that advanced. The Brack warlord slammed his claws on the table. Then it must be the humans. They hid their fleets somewhere beyond our scans. The Sarin chair said nothing. She only stared at the holographic image of the Orion frontier, her golden eyes reflecting the flicker of blue static. The silence between the shouts told her everything. Earth hadn't been destroyed. Earth had been waiting. Far from the Council's world, beyond the frozen edges of known space, the truth lived in shadow. Behind a dead moon that no empire dared to chart, something massive stirred. The darkness moved, parting the stars as a shape emerged from nothingness. It wasn't a planet or a station. It was a ship. No, more than a ship. It was a city forged from silence, a relic of humanity's lost age, surrounded by hundreds of others drifting in perfect formation. The Hidden Fleet. They had slept for decades, powered down, invisible to every scan, buried under gravity cloaks so dense that even light bent around them. Now, one by one, their engines woke. The void filled with faint blue glow, quiet but powerful, like the heartbeat of a giant waking from its slumber. Inside the flagship, Sol's heart, the command deck came alive. The air was cold, filled with the hum of power returning after centuries of silence. Men and women in dark uniforms walked across metal floors, their faces calm, their eyes sharp. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Every movement was precise, practiced, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. In the center stood Admiral Reyes, his gaze locked on the holographic map floating before him. Dozens of red dots flickered, alien fleets still moving toward Terran space, unaware they were being watched. His jaw tightened. "They never learn," he said quietly. The ship's AI answered in a soft, female voice. "Admiral, they believe you are gone." Reyes gave a faint smile that never reached his eyes. "Then let them keep believing until the last moment." The fleet stretched for miles, a silent wall of steel and vengeance hidden behind the light of a dying sun. Old Earth ships, rebuilt from the ashes of Centauri, now merged with new ones, creations of human patience and desperation. Each hull bore no colors, no flag, only simple white words etched into their armor: peace given, peace taken, peace remembered. Every ship had its purpose. Some were carriers, some were fortresses, some were weapons that no one had ever seen before. Together, they formed something far greater, a promise kept through silence. Humanity had rebuilt not for glory or conquest, but for the one truth they could never forget. They had offered mercy once. It would not be offered again. On the far side of the galaxy, alien fleets still searched the void for signs of human life. They scanned the ruins of old Terran colonies, confused to find recent activity. Machines they thought were dead had begun transmitting faint signals, heartbeat patterns, old human frequencies. The Brack warlord sent more ships. "Find them," he roared. "Drag them into the light." His commanders obeyed, but their sensors returned nothing. Only static. Then, slowly, their screens began to fill with data they couldn't read, encrypted Terran code repeating endlessly. A message hidden within numbers. One officer managed to translate the first line before his ship's systems failed completely. The words burned onto his screen. "We are still here." Back in the Council's chamber, chaos grew. "Our fleets are disappearing. Our scanners are blind." Our systems are collapsing. The Sarin chair stood motionless while the others shouted. She had seen this once before, long ago, when humans first entered the stars. She remembered how they moved like a storm, quiet before striking, never wasting words, never showing fear. "They are not attacking," she said softly, her voice almost drowned by panic. "They are surrounding us." The others ignored her, too afraid to believe. But she was right. All across the spiral arms, the hidden fleet was moving, not fast, not loud, but with the precision of inevitability. They didn't fight for territory or power. They were positioning for something larger, something final. Inside Sol's heart, the human crew watched as live feeds displayed the alien movements. Thousands of ships advancing, their formations wide and disorganized. Reyes stood silently, hands clasped behind his back. "They think numbers will save them," he murmured. The Eye's voice was calm. "They have forgotten who they face." Reyes looked toward the central viewport, where the stars seemed to fade as cloaking systems intensified. "We tried peace," he said, almost to himself. "We sent aid, shared medicine, offered unity. They called it arrogance. We went silent to give them space. They mistook it for fear. And now, they will learn the truth." He turned to his officers. "Activate the line." At his command, the fleet began to shift. Across space, hundreds of ships aligned in perfect synchrony, forming a single line that stretched from one horizon to the next. Energy pulsed along their hulls, a river of blue light connecting them like veins of a living thing. It was the rebirth of the Terran line, the ancient formation that had once defended humanity during its darkest hour. The same strategy that had broken 5 empires now stood ready again, silent and waiting. As power built, the void itself began to tremble. On the alien scanners, strange readings appeared, massive gravitational distortions spreading across the sector. "It's a solar flare," one commander shouted. But the readings didn't match. The distortions were too controlled, too deliberate. Then they saw it, an outline of ships so vast it filled half the display. A wall of light emerging from nothing. The commander froze. "It's them." The first signal came from Sol's heart, carried across frequencies in every known tongue. It was only 6 words long, but it would become legend for millennia. "You mistake our silence for fear." The voice was human, calm, unshaken, final. The alien commanders screamed for defense protocols, but their systems were already failing. Engines died, weapons froze, and communications turned to static. The human fleet didn't fire. They simply activated something no alien civilization had ever seen. A pulse that bent time around their ships, locking the battlefield in silence. For 23 seconds, no sound, no light, no data escaped that region of space. When the silence ended, so did the alien fleet. Only wreckage drifted where thousands of ships had once stood. Across the galaxy, messages poured in. Distress calls. Broken transmissions. The words "Terran fleet engaged" repeated across every channel until even that went quiet. The Council's command center flickered with panic. "They have weapons that erase space itself." "It's impossible. They were supposed to be extinct." The Sarin chair closed her eyes. "No," she whispered. "They were only waiting for us to forget why we feared them." Back inside Sol's heart, Reyes stood at the viewport, watching the debris drift in the dark. "Report," he said. The AI replied softly, "All targets neutralized. Minimal energy spent. Fleet integrity at 99%. Reyes nodded, expression unreadable. "Transmit coordinates of the next system." The AI paused. "Admiral, the Council will call for surrender." Reyes looked down, his voice almost sad. "They won't understand until they feel what we felt. The silence. The loss. The weight of being ignored." He turned away from the stars. "We are not monsters. We are their reflection." The fleet vanished into the dark, leaving only silence behind. Across the galaxy, power grids flickered. Governments trembled. Worlds that once called humans primitive now whispered their name like a warning. The galaxy had sought war, and humanity had answered, not with rage, but with precision, patience, and quiet fury. And as the stars dimmed one by one under the shadow of their passage, a message pulsed through every frequency, soft, endless, impossible to block. You wanted war. We wanted peace. You mistook silence for fear. Now learn what silence can do. The galaxy had gone quiet, but silence now carried the sound of terror. Across thousands of systems, fleets once proud of their strength floated dead in space, their command channels filled only with static. Those who dared to enter Terran sectors never returned. In the heart of the Council's citadel, the delegates screamed for answers, for control, for anything that would make sense of the nightmare. The Brak warlord slammed his claws against the glowing map of the Milky Way, his roar shaking the room. You call this peace? They've erased our fleets. The Othari envoy hissed through trembling lips. You brought this upon us. We should have left Earth alone. But the Sarin chair said nothing. Her golden eyes stared into the holographic void, watching as red markers, the Council's fleets, vanished one after another, replaced by the pale blue lights of the returning Terran line. Every system that mocked humanity now flickered under its shadow. In the far reaches of the Orion Spur, wreckage drifted through frozen black. Among the twisted metal and shattered hulls, a single Terran probe floated silently, its beacon pulsing faintly. The probe was old, a relic from the age when humans still sought peace among the stars, before the Council turned their kindness into chains. Its signal was weak, yet every time it blinked, entire alien detection networks crashed. Inside the signal was a message written in every known language. We remember. On Vega's edge, survivors of the Council's destroyed armada huddled inside crippled ships. Their engines were dead, their communications cut off. Through cracked viewports they watched the stars shift, and for a moment, they thought they saw movement. Shadows moving across the void, massive shapes that blocked starlight but made no sound. When one of the younger officers asked what it was, the old commander whispered, "It's them." The crew fell silent. None of them dared to speak again. In the next hour, their systems rebooted without command. Their navigation screens lit up with coordinates leading straight back to their own capital worlds. And beneath those coordinates, a message appeared in human text. This is Mercy. Back on Earth, deep beneath the old mountains, the great halls of command burned with blue light as the Terran Council gathered for the first time in 2 centuries. Generals, scientists, engineers, and veterans of the Centauri Purge stood shoulder to shoulder in a chamber older than memory. At its center stood Admiral Reyes, his face illuminated by the holographic stars surrounding him. The galaxy is watching, he said softly. They remember the stories, but not the truth. They think the old wars were madness. They never knew what drove us to fight. He looked to his officers. They called us monsters when we defended ourselves. Now they will learn what monsters are made of. The room fell silent as he raised his hand. Transmit the signal. All systems. All frequencies. And so, across the stars, the same message echoed again. Calm, clear, and human. You mistake our silence for fear. The words reached every corner of the galaxy, bouncing through the ruins of old satellites, through derelict stations, through the deep dark where no light had touched in centuries. Entire civilizations froze mid-motion. The great trade routes went silent. The broadcast wasn't just a voice, it was a presence. A feeling that reached into the bones, cold and heavy. The alien empires tried to fight back. The Brak Empire sent its last war legion toward Sol. 5,000 ships armed with plasma and wrath. They never reached it. Somewhere between the stars, their formation broke apart as their engines flickered one by one. The ships drifted helpless, systems hijacked by an invisible code. One by one, each ship's main display came alive with the image of a single human face. A woman's face, calm, expressionless, eyes like steel. Her voice was quiet but carried through every hull. We begged for peace. You answered with fire. Now we answer with silence. The screens went dark, and then the Brak fleet was gone. Not destroyed, gone. The Council tried to hide the truth, but fear cannot be hidden. Civilians whispered of shadows passing over their skies, of old Terran distress beacons turning on again. Merchants who once traded in laughter now spoke in hushed tones, saying that the humans had become something more than flesh and blood. They said Earth had become a living machine, a world that listened, remembered, and reached out across the stars. Some called it myth. Others called it judgment. Inside Sol's heart, Admiral Reyes stood before his bridge crew, the holographic map of the galaxy spinning slowly before them. Every red point on the map, every hostile system, now dimmed one by one as Terran codes spread like veins of light through the dark. His officers watched in silence as entire sectors went offline, alien armadas rendered powerless. "Status?" he asked. "The Zenth Confederacy has fallen," one officer said. "The Dominion's capital has surrendered." Reyes nodded slowly. "And the Council?" The AI responded, voice soft, still in session, "Admiral. They are trying to negotiate." Reyes smiled faintly. "They had centuries to negotiate. We spent that time building." The fleet drifted past the rings of Saturn, the glow of the old world reflecting on their hulls. Below them, Earth shimmered, blue, calm, alive. "We fought to protect this," Reyes whispered. "They called it weakness. But weakness doesn't survive this long." The eyes' tone grew quieter. "And when they ask for forgiveness?" Reyes didn't answer. His eyes were cold as he looked at the stars. "Forgiveness," he said slowly, "is earned. And they haven't begun to pay the price." Back at the Council, panic turned into despair. Every network flickered with strange data, codes that could not be translated, patterns that formed the shape of a human hand. The delegates screamed at their technicians. "Trace it! Shut it down!" But there was no trace to follow. The message wasn't invading their systems. It was their systems. Every piece of technology they used carried Terran design, old circuits, old code, old algorithms gifted long ago by the same species they now called the enemy. Humanity had built the foundation of the galaxy's machines. Now those machines had come home. The lights in the Council chamber dimmed. Every hologram went black except one. A blue planet spinning slowly, shining against the dark. Then, a voice filled the hall. It wasn't Reyes this time. It wasn't any known Terran commander. It was older, softer, almost kind. "We gave you the stars," the voice said. "We taught you how to fly, how to breathe beyond your worlds. And you used our gift to burn others. You forgot who lit the way. So we remind you." The delegates couldn't move. The Brack warlord fell to his knees, trembling. The Othari envoy wept silently. The Sarin chair lowered her head, whispering, "They are not just returning. They are remembering." Across the galaxy, every human colony long thought dead flickered to life. Energy signatures rose from planets once burned to ash. Machines awoke, old AI systems reconnected, and forgotten ships lifted off from the dust of ruin. Humanity wasn't fighting for dominance. It was reclaiming itself. The echoes of old wars came back, not as fire, but as memory, every loss, every betrayal, every broken treaty recorded and replayed. The galaxy that once stood united against Earth now saw itself reflected in the mirror of its own cruelty. And what it saw was fear. Admiral Reyes stood before the window of his ship, watching the stars stretch as the fleet prepared for its next jump. "How long has it been?" he asked quietly. "Since they laughed at us." The AI answered softly, 217 years, Admiral." Reyes nodded, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "Then it's time they remembered why the stars feared our name." He turned toward his crew. "Set course for the Council. Let them hear the echo." Engines ignited. The void came alive with the roar of light and energy. And as the Terran fleet disappeared into the folds of space, the words that once started as a warning became something eternal, whispered through the dark like prophecy, trembling in the hearts of all who heard them. "You wanted war. You mistook silence for fear. You will now learn what silence remembers." No-one saw the next war begin, because it did not start with fleets or fire but with silence that moved like smoke. The Council believed the Terran assault was over, that the humans had struck once to prove a point and vanished back into their shadows. They told their people it was safe to speak again, to trade again, to rebuild. But while the speeches echoed through bright halls and banners of peace waved across the worlds, deep space was changing. Invisible frequencies rippled through the dark like whispers, old Terran codes awakening systems that had slept for centuries. One by one, the galaxy's borders began to flicker. Patrol ships reported distortions on their sensors, voices hidden beneath static, words they could almost understand. Then one message became clear. We are coming. The Council ordered defenses around every major world. The Brack Empire's dreadnoughts formed a wall across the Orion Pass. The Varn Dominion surrounded their home stars with mines. The Sarin built shields so strong they drained half their planet's energy. Every species prepared for battle the old way. Loud, desperate, proud. But humanity was not coming the old way. There were no convoys, no warnings, no declarations. Instead, strange shadows appeared above the moons, silent outlines of ships where no ships should exist. The first alarms sounded on the edge of Vega space when orbital telescopes saw stars vanish for half a second. They did not explode, they were simply gone from the sky. When the light returned, the stars looked different, shifted, as if the universe itself had bent around something unseen. Within hours, the first contact came. The Brack Patrol fleet, 300 ships, detected movement near a dead nebula. They went to investigate, scanners sweeping. There was nothing there. The Admiral laughed through the comms, calling it ghosts of war. Then every ship in his formation received the same transmission. A woman's voice, human, calm, cutting through static. We told you. Silence is not surrender. At that moment, their reactors overloaded without warning. One by one, their engines died. Their ships drifted helpless. And from the dark, a single human vessel materialized, larger than anything they had ever imagined. The hull was black, the windows unlit. Its name glowed faintly under the starlight, Echo of Sol. Without firing a shot, it released a pulse of blue light. When it passed, nothing remained, not debris, not sound, not memory. The system fell quiet again, as if those ships had never existed. News of the loss reached the Council within hours. The chamber erupted in fear and fury. They are using forbidden weapons, shouted the Varn ambassador. They are rewriting space itself, screamed another. The Sarin chair only whispered, no, they are UN writing us. She looked at the stars on the ceiling, the same constellations humans had once drawn maps from, and felt something no leader had felt in centuries, remorse. Across the galaxy, ordinary citizens watched as trade routes closed and communications faltered. Strange human transmissions appeared in civilian frequencies, fragments of songs, old Earth music, soft piano notes, violins, human voices singing in languages no one remembered. It wasn't noise. It was memory, sent as warning. Every time one of those songs played, an enemy fleet disappeared within the next day. The galaxy started calling it the War of Echoes. Inside Sol's heart, Admiral Reyes stood before the vast star map, lines of light showing systems where the human fleet had passed. The AI spoke softly. Phase 2 complete, Admiral. The enemy networks are collapsing. Reyes's eyes reflected the map, burning blue in the dark. They wanted war, he said. We'll give them war they can't even see. He turned toward his crew, hundreds of silent officers waiting for his command. Proceed with the next strikes. No destruction of civilians. No unnecessary fire. We erase their weapons, not their children. Let them remember that we fought clean. The officers nodded, their faces expressionless but their hearts heavy. They knew this war was not for conquest. It was a lesson, a final one, and lessons always came with pain. As the fleet advanced, alien worlds began to experience what humans once had: silence. Cities powered down, their skies dimmed, their communication towers died mid-sentence. People gathered under the cold stars, staring upward as the sky shimmered faintly with aurora-like light. Some fell to their knees and prayed. Others waited for death that never came. Humanity was not burning their worlds. It was cutting them off, forcing them to live without the noise they once used to drown conscience. At the edge of the galaxy, the last coalition of alien warlords gathered their remaining fleets. Millions of ships formed the largest armada ever assembled. They broadcast their challenge across every channel. We will not hide from you, humans. Face us in open battle. The challenge echoed through space, and for a moment the galaxy held its breath. Then, in the void before them, a single light appeared, one Terran ship, alone, drifting quietly. The warlords laughed. One ship. But as their scanners zoomed in, they saw its surface changing. Reflections rippled across it like water, revealing the outlines of hundreds more ships behind it, cloaked in the dark. The laughter died. Admiral Reyes's voice came through every open channel. You asked for war. Now you face it. Remember, you chose this. The alien commanders screamed orders to fire. Thousands of weapons lit the sky, energy bolts slicing through the dark. Yet none hit. The human fleet moved through the barrage like smoke, bending light, bending gravity. Then, without warning, the stars themselves went white. A pulse spread outward, slow and quiet, yet powerful enough to crush suns. When the light faded, the battlefield was empty. No wreckage, no sound, only stillness. Humanity had won again, but there was no joy in victory, only the heavy calm of necessity fulfilled. Back on Earth, deep beneath the mountains, a small group of children looked up at the night sky. They saw the stars flicker and asked their teacher what it meant. The teacher smiled sadly. It means the galaxy is learning what silence really is. Inside the Council's fortress, the remaining delegates stared at their failing systems. Their fleets gone, their worlds cut off, their pride shattered. The Sarin chair whispered to the others, they could have destroyed us all. But they didn't. The Brack warlord, his armor cracked and dull, muttered, why not? The answer came not from her but from every screen around them. The human symbol appeared again, a white circle with a single blue point at its center. Then a voice, gentle and human, filled the chamber. Because destruction is easy, understanding is harder. The transmission ended, leaving them in silence. Across the galaxy, humanity's fleet powered down its weapons. The war was over, but not finished. Every species now lived under the same quiet that once surrounded Earth, a silence that demanded reflection. For the first time in thousands of years, the stars felt honest. Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of Sol's heart, his face pale in the glow of the distant suns. They will rebuild, the AI said softly. Reyes nodded. Let them. But they'll never forget this. He looked at the stars and whispered, they wanted war. We gave them truth. And as the Terran fleet vanished once more into the folds of deep space, the last faint signal reached every corner of the galaxy, a human voice, calm and final. You wanted war. You mistook silence for fear. Now you will remember both. 4 weeks after the last battle, the galaxy waited for humanity's next move. But the Terran fleet had gone silent again, their ships vanishing into the dark like whispers fading into deep space. No more attacks came. No messages, no warnings. Just stillness. Across the stars, alien worlds repaired what they could, rebuilding their shattered fleets, pretending the war was over. Yet no one dared to speak the human name aloud. They feared even the sound of it might summon the ghosts that had erased entire armadas without firing a single visible weapon. The silence became unbearable. It pressed against their minds like the weight of guilt itself. Then one day, the sky changed. On thousands of worlds, at the same moment, every device, every screen, every radio, every data network, flickered to life. Civilian markets froze. Soldiers stopped mid-step. Even the council chamber, with its endless shouting, went quiet. Across every corner of the galaxy, the same image appeared. A cracked and faded blue flag fluttering in a slow wind. Behind it stood an old man, human, wearing a dark uniform without medals. His hair was white, his eyes calm, and his expression heavy with something deeper than anger, understanding. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost tired, but it carried through every planet, every home, every ship. We gave the galaxy peace, he said. We built your stations, healed your sick, shared our food and medicine when your worlds were dying. We offered you unity. You called it arrogance. We offered mercy. You called it fear. When we went silent, it wasn't because we were weak. It was because we were rebuilding, because we believed you would one day remember who we were. He paused. The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Instead, you came with fleets. You came with fire. You wanted war. So we answered. Not with hate. Not with conquest. But with understanding. The kind only the betrayed can give. The image flickered slightly. Behind him, through a shattered window, the ruins of an ancient city could be seen. An earth long scarred but still standing. We have no need for revenge, he continued. We don't need to destroy you. You're doing that yourselves. We came only to remind you that silence was never fear. It was restraint. Mercy. Patience. His eyes looked away for a moment, as if seeing beyond the camera, into something greater. And patience, he said softly, has its limits. Across the stars, the message continued, unstoppable. You build your empires on arrogance, but you forget who taught you to reach the stars. You forget who carried your refugees when your worlds burned. You forget who gave you technology and trust. Humanity did not vanish. Humanity waited. And in our waiting, we grew stronger. We grew silent because words were wasted on those who do not listen. The light behind him shifted, glowing like dawn. We asked for peace, he said again. You chose war. Now, you will live with what you chose. Then the flag faded, replaced by a simple image, a glowing map of the Milky Way. One by one, lights began to turn off across the galactic network. Entire sectors went dark as power grids collapsed. Fleets lost contact with their bases. Worlds that had depended on Terran-built communication relays found themselves alone in the dark. Panic erupted. Commanders screamed for status reports. Engineers tore open control panels. But nothing worked. Humanity had turned off the galaxy. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. They've disabled our entire network. We're blind. We can't reach our fleets. The Sarin chair stood slowly, her face pale beneath her golden feathers. They've taken away the sound, she whispered. Now we know what they felt. The Brack warlord roared in frustration. Why not just destroy us? The chair turned her tired eyes toward him. Because destruction would be mercy. They want us to listen. As she spoke, the human broadcast changed. The image of the old man faded, replaced by Earth itself. Blue oceans, white clouds, green lands, all bathed in quiet sunlight. And beneath it, words appeared in every language. We are not your enemies. We are your reflection. Then came a new voice, younger, a woman's voice this time. It was filled with sorrow, not rage. We were the only species who believed the stars could live in peace. You called us dreamers. Now the dreamers have awakened. We will not destroy you, but we will no longer save you. Your silence begins now. And then, with one final flash, the transmission ended. The screens went black. Across the galaxy, millions sat in the dark, unable to speak, unable to think, just staring at the reflection of their own faces in the dead monitors. Slowly, the noise of panic began to fade. The universe itself seemed to breathe slower. On the surface of Earth, in the command hall deep beneath the mountains, Admiral Reyes watched the last signal disappear into the void. The AI beside him spoke softly, almost hesitant. They will hate us, Admiral. Reyes nodded, his eyes still fixed on the stars. They already did, he said quietly. But now, they'll finally understand. He turned away from the holographic display. End the broadcast. Prepare the fleet to return home. The officers hesitated. Sir, the council will fall without us. Billions will die. Reyes's expression softened. Then maybe they'll learn to live. The AI spoke again, quieter this time. And if they don't? Reyes walked toward the observation window, where the reflection of Earth shimmered against his face. Then history will remember that we gave them a choice. He paused, watching the clouds swirl beneath the stars. And they chose war. In the days that followed, the galaxy slipped into chaos. Worlds once united by the Council turned on each other, desperate for control of the remaining resources. But something strange began to happen. Amid the fear and anger, some worlds started to rebuild differently. Instead of raising new armies, they opened their borders. Instead of fighting, they began to speak, to cooperate, to trade, to listen. Humanity's silence had done what words never could. It forced the galaxy to hear its own voice. Months later, a single transmission came from the far edge of the Milky Way. It was faint, almost too weak to detect. The signal carried no words, only a sound, a slow, steady heartbeat. Scientists across 100 worlds tried to decode it, but there was nothing to decode. It was exactly what it was. Life. A reminder. The voice of the humans, echoing through the dark, not in anger but in memory. Back on Earth, Reyes stood before the great window of Sol's heart, watching the sunrise break over the horizon. Do you think they'll change? The AI asked softly. Reyes smiled faintly. They have to, he said. Because this time, they know we're still listening. And as the golden light spread across the silent fleet, the Admiral whispered words that would echo in history forever. You wanted war. You found silence. Let's see which one survives longer. The galaxy had grown quiet, but it was not peace. It was the kind of silence that follows a great storm, when the air still trembles with memory and the horizon smells of fear. The Council was no longer the shining center of power it once claimed to be. Its grand towers, once lit with the colors of 100 worlds, now flickered dimly. Communication was gone. Fleets had vanished. The delegates who survived the first collapse met in the dark halls by candlelight, whispering like frightened children. For the first time in their long history, they were no longer gods among the stars. They were lost. Every world they ruled had turned inward, broken, alone. All their strength, all their pride, meant nothing. Humanity had taken the galaxy's voice and left it to hear itself. The Brack warlord sat slumped in silence, his armor cracked, his claws dull. His species had built empires on conquest, and now his fleets lay cold and lifeless among the stars. The Othari envoy, once covered in jewels, now trembled with bare scales. The Varn Dominion's delegates stared at the floor, muttering that their gods had forsaken them. But the Sarin chairwoman stood tall, her feathers gray with age but her eyes still sharp. No, she said softly. It was not gods. It was humans. We called them weak. We called them emotional. But they were never weak. They were listening. The chamber fell silent. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled across the planet's atmosphere, and the light from the sky pulsed faintly with the glow of distant Terran energy signatures still watching from orbit. No one dared to look up anymore. When humans spoke, they listened. When humans were silent, they prayed. Every species had come to understand that lesson too late. On a distant world called Zenth Prime, children stared up at the stars that used to sing with trade and war signals. Now those skies were empty. Their teachers told them stories of the humans, how they once gave medicine and ships, how they brought peace and knowledge. The children asked, why did they leave us? The teachers had no answer. They looked to the sky, whispering, because we didn't listen. In the ruins of the old Council fleets, scavengers drifted among wreckage frozen in the void. Ships that once carried millions of soldiers were now hollow tombs. When they tried to salvage Terran metal, the machines would hum softly, warning them away. The humans had left traces behind, invisible guardians that waited, silent, patient, reminding every scavenger who dared touch them, respect the silence. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity watched from afar. From the blue home world, now a fortress of living light, the fleet floated in stillness. No celebration followed their victory. No cheering crowds. The silence belonged to them as much as it belonged to the galaxy. Inside the command hall of Sol's heart, Admiral Reyes stood surrounded by his officers. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of the planet below. His face was tired, lined by the weight of years spent waiting, building, enduring. Status of the outer sectors, he asked quietly. Stable, one officer replied. Most worlds are repairing themselves. No fleets, no wars. Reyes nodded slowly. And the council? The Eye's voice answered from the speakers. They are broken, Admiral. They are beginning to understand. Reyes looked out at the stars. Then our work is done. But deep in his chest, something ached. The AI spoke again, almost tenderly. Do you pity them? Reyes hesitated. I don't know, he said. They made us what we became. But yes, maybe I do. They called us monsters for defending ourselves. They called us weak when we offered peace. They mocked us for believing the stars could unite. But now they live in our silence, and I wonder if it feels like justice or tragedy. His eyes softened. Maybe both. Back in the broken council chamber, the delegates gathered once more. There were no guards now, no soldiers, no grand speeches. Only weary faces under fading lights. The Sarin chairwoman stood before them. Our pride built this empire, she said, voice trembling, and pride destroyed it. The humans showed us what mercy looks like when it breaks. We laughed at them for being emotional, but now I see, emotion was their strength. They cared enough to stop us before we destroyed ourselves. The Othari envoy whispered, Do you think they will forgive us? The chairwoman looked up at the dark ceiling where once hung the image of the galaxy's core. Forgiveness is for those who listen, she said. And we never did. Then the lights flickered again. The council guards raised their weapons in panic, but there was no threat, just a soft blue glow spreading across the walls. The holograms activated by themselves, projecting an image that made every heart freeze. It was Earth again, the same planet they had cursed and feared, shining quietly among the stars. A voice followed, calm, clear, unmistakably human. This is Earth, the voice said. We hear your silence. We will not speak again. The stars are yours now. Do better than we did. No one spoke. No one moved. The message ended, but its echo lingered in every mind. For the first time, the council felt something it could not command, could not legislate, could not escape. Humility. It spread through the chamber like light through glass, fragile and beautiful. Some fell to their knees. Others wept. The Sarin chairwoman bowed her head. They could have destroyed us, she whispered. Instead, they left us hope. Outside, the skies of the council world cleared for the first time in years. The dark clouds that had lingered since the war broke apart, revealing stars brighter than they had ever seemed before. And among those stars, faintly, ships moved in silence, the Terran fleet, gliding like shadows of light, leaving the galaxy they had once tried to save. On Sol's heart, Reyes watched as the coordinates for hyperspace jump aligned. The AI spoke softly. Destination. Reyes looked at the star map, then closed his eyes. Somewhere quiet, he said. Somewhere far. The fleet engines powered up, their glow spreading like sunrise across the void. Before they vanished, a final transmission left Earth, bouncing across every known frequency, reaching every world one last time. The message was only a few words, but it carried the weight of all that had been lost and learned. We gave you peace. You answered with pride. Now let your silence teach you humility. And then, they were gone. Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt in their absence. Wars ended faster. Leaders spoke softer. Every generation remembered the humans as both legend and warning. Children learned their story not from fear but from reverence. And on nights when the stars seemed too still, old radios would catch a faint sound in the static. A heartbeat, slow and distant, echoing through the void. No one knew where it came from. Some said it was Earth, still watching. Others said it was the galaxy itself, learning to breathe again. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, in the deep silence between galaxies, the Terran fleet drifted unseen, their lights dim, their purpose complete. Humanity had won the war not by fire but by patience, not by conquest but by understanding. The galaxy had fallen, but in that fall, something greater had risen. The arrogance of empires had ended, replaced by the fragile, enduring truth that silence, when earned, becomes peace. The years after the silence were not written in history books but in the way the galaxy changed. The great empires that once ruled with arrogance had grown quiet. No one shouted in the council halls anymore. No one raised fleets or demanded tribute. The stars themselves seemed softer now, their light gentler, as if afraid to wake something ancient that still listened from the dark. On thousands of worlds, the story of humanity passed from memory to legend. They called them the keepers of silence, the lost race, the architects of peace. Children learned their name in whispers, not as conquerors, but as the ones who turned war into reflection. The galaxy rebuilt itself not through strength but through fear of the lesson it could never forget. In the ruins of the old council planet, nature returned. The towers of glass and light that once stretched into the sky now lay covered in vines, and the wind carried faint traces of human music, echoes left behind in the data streams that no one could erase. The last council chairwoman, now old and frail, walked through the abandoned chamber where history had broken. She stopped before the great window that once overlooked the stars, the same stars she had seen burn when the humans struck. Her voice was soft when she spoke to no one but the silence. "You were right," she said. "We mistook your silence for fear. We called your mercy weakness. And still, you showed us kindness." She looked to the sky, tears shining in her golden eyes. "If you still hear us, humanity, know this, we remember." Across the galaxy, humanity's presence had become a myth, but the myth never faded. On the world of Vega Prime, the same world that once mocked Earth, a statue now stood in the center of its capital. It was not a soldier, not a conqueror, but a figure holding a child, one hand reaching toward the stars. Beneath it were words carved in a dozen alien languages. They fought so we could learn silence. Every year, on the day the Terran fleets had vanished, the people gathered beneath the statue and stayed quiet for one full hour. No speeches, no songs, just silence. And in that silence, they found peace. Far beyond the known systems, at the edge of a dying nebula, a flicker of blue light stirred. From the emptiness emerged a single Terran ship, its hull black and ancient, carrying the emblem of Earth faded with age. Inside, the crew moved quietly through dim corridors, their faces calm, their voices low. The ship's systems had been asleep for decades, waiting for one command. At the heart of it, in a room lit only by the stars, an old man sat at the console, Admiral Reyes. His hair was silver now, his eyes dim but unbroken. The eye's voice spoke softly beside him. "Admiral, all systems ready. Shall we return home?" Reyes smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carries both sorrow and pride. "Home," he whispered. "Home is where silence begins." He looked out through the viewport, where the galaxy stretched before him, quiet, vast, and beautiful again. "Do you think they learned?" he asked. The AI paused. "They have changed," it said. "They speak softly now. They remember you." Reyes nodded slowly. "Then we did our duty." He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the faces of those who fought, those who fell, those who kept faith when the galaxy turned against them. "We were never gods," he said softly. "We were only human. And that was enough." The eye's lights dimmed, its tone gentle. "Admiral, the final message is ready." Reyes opened his eyes, calm and steady. "Then let's send it." Across the Terran fleet, still hidden beyond the stars, cloaked in silence, lights came alive one last time. Beacons that had not spoken in a century began to glow, sending their signals across every corner of the galaxy. The message carried no threat, no anger, only a voice. The same voice that had once offered peace and been rejected. "This is Earth," it said. "We are still here. We never left. We watch. We listen. We wait. And we hope." The transmission spread like dawn through the darkness, reaching every world, every ship, every being that still looked to the stars. On Vega Prime, people stopped and listened. On the shattered moons of Brack, the miners removed their helmets and stared at the night. On the quiet Sarin homeworld, the old chairwoman lifted her head toward the sky, smiling through tears. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy was united again, not by conquest, not by fear, but by the sound of a human voice reminding them that silence could hold compassion as deeply as it once held fury. Back aboard Sol's heart, Reyes stood and looked at the stars for the last time. The AI spoke softly, "Message sent, Admiral." He nodded, his voice quiet. "Then our task is complete. Let the galaxy write its next chapter without us." The engines hummed to life, a low, soothing sound that blended with the quiet of the universe. "Set course," he whispered. "Anywhere the light still shines." The fleet began to move, its outlines fading into the black. One by one, the ships disappeared, until only their reflections remained in the glow of distant suns. The final transmission continued to echo long after they were gone. It played in every corner of the galaxy, on every world that had once doubted, every ship that had once fought, every heart that had once feared. It became the anthem of a new age, the final answer of humanity to those who had wanted war. "We tried peace. You mistook our silence for fear. But silence is not the end. It is the beginning." Centuries later, when the stars changed again and new species rose to power, they found fragments of that old signal drifting between galaxies, still repeating across the void, soft as a prayer. "This is Earth. We remember. Do you?" And every time someone heard it, they grew quiet, humbled by the thought that somewhere, beyond the edge of the light, the humans still watched. And so the story of the galaxy ended not with the roar of warships or the fire of destruction, but with a whisper that would never die, the whisper of a people who had been mocked for their mercy, who had answered cruelty with silence, and whose silence had outlived empires. Humanity had given the stars their final gift, a world reborn in quiet. The war had ended, but the lesson remained. For in the end, it was never about power, or vengeance, or fear. It was about remembering that the gentlest voice, when silenced too long, becomes the one the universe can never forget. And far away, beyond every map, beyond every light, a single Terran beacon blinked one last time and sent its farewell through the cosmos. The voice that followed was calm and eternal, a promise carried forever through the stars. "We forgive you. We move beyond you. We are still watching." Then it went dark, leaving behind only the endless, beautiful silence humanity had made sacred.